I believe that our approach with insurgency and counterinsurgency and state building is really from the top down. And so when you take that approach, you believe that you can create a functional state through trickle-down state building or trickle-down counterinsurgency. And it doesn't really work that way because insurgents operate at the community level. And so while you're attempting to build security institutions and political institutions at the top, the insurgents are very busy at the community level. And so we have to look at where we're going to place the majority of our effort. And it should be at the community level, the hamlets, the towns, the villages, because that's where the insurgents operate. And if you focus preponderantly at the state level, hoping that eventually security and development will trickle down, by the time you get down to the community level, you have a very robust insurgency occurring, and that's where the real fight will take place. That's what we found occurred in Afghanistan. That's why Petraeus had fielded this new field manual so that we don't have to relearn these lessons. After Vietnam, the Army came culturally to the conclusion that we no longer want to get involved in insurgencies because they're too messy. So we're going to focus on conventional warfare. So from 1972 up until 2001, that was our whole approach. It's very, very kinetic operated in that sense. So we had to relearn insurgency, counterinsurgency, not because we wanted to, but we were forced into that situation. And yes, the idea about using sheiks or the local power brokers to establish local security is the right and pragmatic approach to counterinsurgency. That is where the front lines are against the insurgents. And so if you don't focus on that, it's going to take you a very long time to pacify the country so that other elements of state building take hold, the development, political, economic, other elements of national power permeate the entire country. Your approach drives your strategy, and so if you really want to instill trust and have a good relationship with the local communities, you need to use what is called cadre. I call them cadre. You can call them mentors, what have you. But basically what you're doing is you are inserting these people at the lowest level, and it's a insurgency in reverse. That's how insurgents operate. They come into a village with about a four-man team, and they start building from there. That's what we have to do as well. And when you put in these teams, they make contact with the local authorities, the chieftains or the council or what have you, and they establish what the priorities are going to be. They are coming there to help the local community, and by establishing that rapport and trust, they can begin to build from there. What I saw in Afghanistan is corruption is rampant. When someone does get caught, they can either buy their way out of jail or they get assigned to another province. So it takes some time to rebuild their corrupt cells. We become incensed when we see a blatant corruption. And so I think that part of our training is to inform the mentors that you're going to see corruption. You're going to see some things that do not set well with you. But your job is to assist them into building a society. Democracy and state building are a process, an evolutionary process. So you're not going to make everything fine during your tour. It'll take many years for that to develop. We were in Europe as part of NATO for 60 years, or we're on the 60 years now, and we're still there. Is that an open-ended relationship? Yes, it is. Does it give us advantages? Yeah, we benefit from that, same as in South Korea. Simply because you're in a country and you have an established relationship is not necessarily bad. It's a relationship that you build upon. It does not necessarily mean that you're going to have a robust military presence there. It can evolve to other agencies over time, so that the military can withdraw or have a lower profile in the country. The benefits are that you're establishing friendly ties with another country. That doesn't mean that they're beholden to you. In fact, over time, they will take a stance as part of showing their independence of actually opposing you on some issues. That's good and healthy. That's what we actually want. But we're sharing fundamental values over time. And we're also looking at developing relations with other countries that can pay back what we have given to them today. We're accused of being imperialist, and if you look at imperialism as attempting to keep the empire stable, are we an economic empire globally? Yeah, in a way we are, because we're attempting to protect those aspects of globalization and trade and things like that so that it doesn't break out into chaos. And so if you don't address accusations against you, people are going to believe the conspiracy or the rumor, no matter how wild it is to us. If it's not answered, then the people are going to believe that. So accusations of the United States being an imperialistic power hell-bent on occupying key regions of the world is going to gain a certain amount of traction with these with the indigenous people and the international community, the non-aligned nations, so to speak. We call it information operations. It can also be called propaganda. I think that the term propaganda kind of became a dirty word in our vocabulary, and hence we made no attempt to rebut insurgent propaganda with our own, with telling what the ground truth is. And so you have to go out and you can't just have a technical approach to this. It might be word of mouth. It might be the cadres in the towns providing a daily message of what's going on the outside world, and to also rebut insurgent propaganda. Now, what the Taliban likes to do in Afghanistan is if there's any type of engagement, they will immediately say that 40 civilians were killed in the process. And lo and behold, the actual truth is maybe 5 civilians were killed and the rest were Taliban militants. But the message is that NATO is killing civilians. And so you have to come out immediately and rebut that. World War II scared us so much as a country and as a military that we swore to ourselves institutionally that we would never be caught so unready again for a major war again. And so we're attempting to always fight World War II again. Everything is focused on fighting major conventional conflicts, but those are the anomalies. Traditional war is actually these small wars, these insurgencies. So we're coming back to our roots, but there's an argument that's going on among us military folks. Some want us to maintain our focus on fighting conventional wars. And others are saying, okay, those are important, and it's a skill set that you need to retain, but we have to face reality. We're going to be involved in many more of these small wars than a major conflagration. So we should focus our effort on those. You know, the problem with Vietnam is which Vietnam are you speaking of? Because Vietnam has so many different aspects to it depending on the year that you're looking at. Up until 1968, when the Viet Cong were destroyed as a threat, we were fighting both a conventional war against the North Vietnamese and an unconventional enemy, and it was a war on two fronts. So it was very difficult for Westmoreland to take his limited resources and fight both fronts simultaneously. And the Vietnamese did us a favor by having the Tet Offensive, actually, because it permitted us to destroy that infrastructure so that we could focus against the North with our conventional forces and using the popular forces and regional forces to stave off the Viet Cong that were left in place, basically. The post-68 was basically General Abrams, who's now in charge, is able to push the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong forces farther and farther away from the population centers, the hamlets, these little urban areas, so that without this access to the civilian population, the insurgency could not grow, could not threaten the state. And so that's why you really have a treaty that occurs in 1972. The North Vietnamese army could not make inroads against South Vietnam, so we had a peace treaty. And the peace treaty with the South was we would provide you with air power and logistics should the North renege on their agreement and attack you. Political situation had changed so that by 1975, both of those items were not available to the South Vietnamese, and they fell to a conventional invasion, much like as East Germany had attacked West Germany. If they were alone, then it would have been a typical war, a conventional war of aggression. If we did withdraw from Iraq and Afghanistan, I think that what we've left behind is probably robust enough for them to be able to deal with the internal enemies that they face for the most part. We must not forget that South Vietnam fell because of an invasion by a well-equipped army that attacked them. In order for this to be replicated in Iraq or Afghanistan, you'd probably have to have an invasion by either Syria against Iraq or Iran against Iraq or Afghanistan or Pakistan. If we had a conventional attack on Iraq, this would raise the concerns of the international community immediately because we're talking about oil at this point. And you cannot have the majority of oil in the hands of one country, a hegemony. If that occurred, then they would be able to use the oil to buy more arms and stuff and expand their military and threaten their neighbors. So that would probably become a global concern immediately, and it would undoubtedly result in a coalition against the aggressing country. Afghanistan's a little bit more difficult because there's really nothing there. If Afghanistan implodes and kind of goes back to what it was in the 90s, the concern is not as great. Now, some people will say that terrorists will be able to use these failed states as enclaves to make attacks against the West or the United States. Well, that might have been true in the 90s, but things have changed since 9/11. We're much more alert as to terrorist activities and have taken countermeasures. So I don't foresee the terrorist organizations being as sophisticated as they'd become up until 2001. We have to have a different set of priorities, and the priority should be to attack the insurgents at their front lines, which is at the bottom, at the local level, and from there you build prosperity and security from the bottom up, instead of just having the preponderance of the effort at the top down, at the national level down. I think that's really going to be the wave of the future for successful counterinsurgencies and also state building. Right now, for the first 6 years in both of these countries, we've really been focused at the top down. So we're very good at building security institutions and advising the government on better governance and such. But as far as putting advisors at the local level, we've pretty much looked at that as an afterthought. Now, who are the real experts at that? Well, it's your special forces. Those are the guys that are really attuned to the cultural and the linguistic aspects of establishing good rapport with the local power brokers or chieftains. So we need to get a little better at having schools to train up local cadres for this effort. Right now, we are still probably at the lowest level we are at right now is probably the provincial level. We'll have mentored teams and we'll have embeds with the Army and some advisors for the policemen, but it really doesn't filter down below that. And that's really where the real trouble begins. And so we need to have a greater training program that trains cadres to go in at the local level so they can go in and begin operations immediately. Doing this approach helps you nip the insurgency in the bud, so to speak, so they can't gain traction. If you can do that, then you don't have to worry about establishing a military that's so large that it can crush an insurgency. It won't have to do that.